There we go. Can you hear us yet? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see. Original sound. On. Okay. Alan Robinson is coming in. Look at that. Hi, Dustin. Hi, James. Hi, Liam. Hi, Alan. All right. Yay.
Welcome.
Let's see.
The doctor is in also.
I'm going to move over just a
Welcome,
little
Dr.
bit
Robinson.
to kind of get into the shot. Okay, so just a quick sound check. How are the levels? You can hear me speak clearly?
1, 2.
Okay. And Julie, you can hear Julie speak clearly? All right, now what about her playing? Okay. The relative volumes are okay? Okay. All right, what about this backing track? We're pretty close? Okay.
Yay.
Good, I think we got it. How's everybody doing?
What's new?
So let me see. Okay.
Doing. It's just trying to survive, man. Just closed out the semester. You know how that is. So.
Oh my God, yeah. I'm closing mine out this coming week, actually.
Oh, you
I
all
just
got
had
another week.
mine today, my last day.
Woohoo! Last days are great days.
I still have one more or two more days at Shenandoah.
Oh, well, we had I think I've graded something like 12 recitals, and I did at least 50 some juries in the past week. So.
Whoa.
It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah, well, very cool. So it must feel good to get done. What's so how many fishing trips are in your future?
I'm hoping not to do any fishing trips. Rachel's got me set up to do hubby duties here at the house. Matter of fact, I did my first one this morning by changing cartridges for showers and bathtubs this morning. So
Nice.
Wow.
yeah, that was fun.
Good. Yeah, good. Yeah, my thing for this summer, I've talked about this a little bit in the past. I recently bought a lawn tractor. So I've been spending way more time kind of playing with my new toy, out there, just kind of making the lawn look it's amazing what a lawn tractor does for your lawn instead of a regular lawnmower. Like, I can't believe it.
Drive it from Massachusetts all the way down to Kentucky, man. I'll let you help me with my landscaping all day long.
I'll tell you, he would love to drive.
I'll get on the tractor and I'll drive straight down to Kentucky. It might take me a week.
That'd be a funny video, man. You can make a music video out of that.
We saw some guy driving one, right?
Yeah, well, okay, so there's an urban legend. There's a guy that owns a famous restaurant chain up in New Hampshire, and great business guy, but had kind of a serious drinking problem. So one of the things that he did was he bought like a John Deere lawn tractor and then had it and then put like a 100 horsepower engine in it. So it had a top speed of like 80 miles an hour. Took the mower deck off, and then because he kept getting arrested for drinking and driving, so he kind of said, okay, well, I'll just get around on my lawn tractor instead, and then of course got a speeding ticket on his lawn tractor on the highway.
On the highway. Imagine that. That'd be
Isn't there some kind of rule if you drive a tractor on the highway, you got to make sure you chew tobacco and spit at the same time, right?
Yes.
At least that's got to be a rule down here in Tennessee and Kentucky, I believe.
I think you're 100% right. And I think you will also kind of have to be utterly unaffected by anybody who drives. Julie and I were having a really kind of an interesting conversation. Um, one of the things we've both been doing is we've been trying to sort of up our practicing game. So whenever we have a spare moment together, she'll come to me and go, "Hey, want to practice?" And then what we'll do is, the last few times
John
she'd been sort of-
harmonizes my scales and
Well-
arpeggios.
So what we'll do is we'll pick a key, and then we'll do all the major scaled modes in that key up and down the fret, but part of it is doing them together. And then we'll do the triad arpeggios and the seventh chord arpeggios, and then maybe some inversions or maybe some chord voice. And I like doing stuff like that just because it really sort of reinforces me just trying to learning my way around the neck instead of having to do it all at once.
It's a great warm-up.
Yeah. So, but then
you're like, let's go up one and down the other.
right.
So
Yeah,
then
we were doing this one yesterday. Yeah. And it took, and to be fair, it took us a while to kind of figure that out.
it was fun.
And I like doing stuff like that, for those reasons. However, having said that, one of the things, and I want to know what you guys' thoughts are about this. One of the things that I run into is that when I'm improvising, I very rarely end up actually using those shapes that I've been practicing. So what comes out when I'm improvising often comes from a totally different place. And what I've been trying to work on my whole life is to try to figure out a way to practice fingerings that end up becoming useful while improvising. And so far, what I've found is that if I try to use a scale pattern that I've practiced, let's say if I'm going to play something in D mixed Lydian. Okay, so.
You start on D.
So so one of the things I keep running into is if I'm gonna operate from a shape, then I'm almost always gonna start, which is fine. It's the right scale, but then it's like, why does your improvisation always sound like you're playing scales? It's because I'm playing scales. You see, so.
So then you were like, let's start on the third string.
Right.
Let's start on the second string.
Yeah. So I asked Julie about that. So.
For me, though, when I'm improvising, I tend to gravitate towards starting on the third and second string.
Okay.
So if I'm in mixolydian, I'll go.
Ah.
And then maybe back down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't practice scales like that. I always go.
Right. And that's the thing I keep finding is that, if I'm actually improvising, what I tend to end up doing is I'll think of like an opening pitch relative to what the chord is. So if it's D9, right, I might open with E, which is the ninth of the chord, and then kind of build from there. And then just kind of just try to build from there. But the vast majority of the time, I'm not really thinking about fingerings as much or shapes as much as thinking about what I want the sound to be. Mm-hmm. And then where my fingers land does end up being, perhaps an unconscious part of that practicing. But I just keep thinking, like, there must be a way to approach this where the stuff that I practice actually comes out in my in my improvisation. So I hope the question makes sense, and I want to know what you guys think.
Do you practice when you play a scale with the root on the sixth string? That was the question John came to me.
Yeah.
So I tend to start on the sixth string, but not necessarily when I improvise.
Right.
But practicing it.
It's kind of fun that you even asked this question, because I just finishing up the semester and doing my improv exam for Improv 2. Going and reviewing, matter of fact, is what I'm getting ready to do if I get off my lazy keister now that I'm out for the summer, maybe I can get back to doing videos. I haven't done a video in like 4 weeks. Man, I am such a lousy YouTuber now. But anyway, I'm getting ready to start a whole series up, kind of on this topic of what I did with my students, which I make them map their improvisation. So like their final exam is, I cover 6 different topics during the semester as far as improvisational jump offs, if you will. I go through making them realize the guide tones. Then they work with triads. Then they work with seventh chords, pentatonic scales, and they work their way up to the full scale. Even though we review the scales in the front, I have them tear them apart. And in order to get the tools under their hands that they're working on, they have to isolate them every 2 weeks of what we're doing. And so, for example, with triads, in order to get those kind of figures, I think this may address what your question is, or at least my way of addressing it, is they have to map it and use specific arpeggios. So, for example, if I was doing D Mixolydian, I don't know, can you hear that at all?
Yeah.
You can? Okay. I did something crazy. I don't know how I've got this routed tonight. So if I'm thinking D Mixolydian, like if I have them work with triads first, and maybe they'll start off the 6th string where they'll think D major, but I have them think in stacked triads based off of the root, the flat 7, and the 5th of the chord. So really coming out of a drop 3 chord. And they think of 3 triads across the fretboard.
Slow that down. Show that to me.
So I play a D major arpeggio, followed by C major, followed by A minor. And that way, I don't know. I try to get them to avoid playing scales that way, and really I won't even have them go across the whole neck, because I'll have them think about the natural symmetry of the guitar, and they'll just do 2 of them at a time, so they could do two octaves. So they could do D C D C.
I see what you're saying. So D, C,
then shift it up. Yeah.
C, Okay.
And so that I kind of work it from there, because then I have them work lines that would come out of that, like which then goes back into doing some enclosures. I walk down the scale.
Okay.
So that's one way that I kind of tackle it, but I don't necessarily always start from the root. More than often, I'll have them start from a substitute. Like they'll think about substituting an A minor 7 arpeggio for the D, and that way they get a D sus, right? So they're thinking that, and they'll get. But the same process, because they'll play A minor, G major, and E minor, or A minor and G, and A minor and G. That kind of thinking. But so really, I'm kind of working with triad pairs, but in a very simplistic manner, maybe. I don't know. I guess it's simplistic.
Well, substituting, that's a big concept, and it just opens up your playing to so many different sounds.
Yeah, and you know what I love, what I particularly love about that is that it's completely away from how I would normally think of something, which I love this, because, thank you, that's my next 6 months, right there.
We're going to write a bunch of etudes.
So how do you decide, like in the case of D9, let me see. So what you're saying was C major, D, C, and then maybe D, C, or D, C, A minor?
Yeah.
No, wait a minute. There was one between.
Yeah, the way I came up with it is I refer to these. A matter of fact, my third book is going to be on all of this kind of stuff this summer. That's one of my summer projects. Is book number 3. We'll see if I do it.
Right.
But I came up with it based off of like drop 3 chords all the way up. So if I was in G major, I'm just thinking about your basic drop 3 chords all the way up. And
Okay, so
what
you
I
keep G.
yeah. And so what I do is I like to use 2-string groups. And that's actually your fault, John, because going all the way back to 1990, whatever it was. I like to think of 2-string groups like your pentatonics, how you would think about playing. And so what I do with the triads is I go across the string sets, and it automatically turned out to be the root, the 7th, and the 5th of the chord. And whatever the diatonic triad was, that's the arpeggio I would play. And if it had an avoid note, I'd kick it out and I'd revamp it. So like on the 1 chord, that would naturally end up with G major to F sharp diminished.
Yeah.
But I don't want that C because it's an avoid note, so I adjust it down to the B. That way I got the 3rd, and then I play D major, which really turns out to be nothing but a B minor 7 over top of G, really. But I think of it in 3 triad groups.
Okay.
And then I do the same thing for every chord diatonically. So I get A minor 7. So where I get A, G, and E. And the other thing it does for me is it gives me all these consistent fingerings because I don't change. It's always my middle finger, first finger, fourth finger for the most part. So nothing changes, so my technique stays really the same, and my picking technique stays the same because I do economy picking where I do down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up.
Right.
We like that as guitar players. We're
Yeah.
always looking for the easy way out.
I want the easy way out. That's exactly what I want. And so now B minor, the 3 chord gets weird because, the 3 chord's not really a 3 chord, it's really a 1 chord. But if I went across, and this also, just so you know, follows suit with your pentatonics in the way that you looked at, if I've got a forward trapezoid box rectangle, and then whatever goes across goes backwards, forward box rectangle, right, going down the string set. So you get that little cross pattern. These work the same in a sense because A goes to G, goes that way, right? So it still is playing that game in one perspective of the XY axis, if you wanted to say it, but that way. But for the B minor, because C's a void note, on that A minor, I shift the C up to D, and I get that pentatonic, kind of fourth kind of thing. And I just carry that across for a B minor in second inversion across the top. So I kind of get like a pentatonic-y kind of thing.
It sounds more open than a scale. I mean, and it's even more than just a normal arpeggio, because are you getting... There's always a wider interval in there somewhere.
Yeah, and that's what I liked about it. The first time I was teaching this to some of my students was I open it up with this kind of thing of, well, play an A minor 11 arpeggio for me, and 9 times out of 10 they will go in there and they'll try to do this kind of thing where they'll go. And they're all over the place, and their fingerings are inconsistent. Their picking is inconsistent. And then I said, had you ever really considered, if you spell out the triads, that A minor 7 or A minor 13 is simply an A minor triad stacked with the G major triad? And I said, if you try that fingering, and all of a sudden they're doing the fingering, they're like, oh my gosh, that's so easy to play it like that. And then
guitar players can only think of 3.
That's right.
To me, it made a lot of sense. But so I started just creating that, and then some of them have options like the 4 chord. If I think of the 7th and the 5th again, there's my Lydian with C major, B minor, and then G major. And I also had the option of playing it just like the 1 chord, so I can, if I don't want the sharp 11, if I don't know it needs a sharp 11, then I can do that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. The one that I do that's kind of weird, and it's not really weird, it's just I don't like the 7th chord, in its natural sense, is I will turn it always into a Locrian natural 9. And so instead of playing, I play F sharp diminished. Instead of playing an E minor, I'll play E major.
Oh.
And then I'll play a C augmented on the top. That way I get that natural 9 again with that G sharp. So I just happen to like that melodic minor sound, so I just mess with the 7 chord and really turn it into the 6 chord from melodic minor. That's just to mess with that, because I do that when I teach them to play tunes like Stella by Starlight or Beautiful Love or any of those that open up with the opening minor 2/5. That's what I change it to that sound, so they I don't know what I just did. There it is. Sorry. Anyway,
Sounds like melodic.
I digress from there, but that's how I started doing it. And I just call them modal arpeggios because they match the mode and the arpeggio perfectly for what they need. And
So let me ask you a question though. So when you're using something like that, are you equally likely to start somewhere in the middle of it, or
Yeah.
Okay.
Not just on the 6th string.
yeah,
Because-
like I'll turn them around.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. One of the things I was thinking was that, right, well, not only that, but like, I can imagine myself practicing it, and then for the first year or so, like always starting them on the 6th string until it's like, wait a minute, I don't always have to do that. Like, it's so funny. One of the things I keep discovering about myself is that I'm very much a creature of habit in terms of what comes out when I'm improvising.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I mean, I had to practice them that way for the longest time just to really figure them out. And then again, that's really why I like the substitutes, because I'll use more of those from the subs than I will from the root to try to avoid sounding like I'm on the root, because I mean that was just a bad habit of mine to do that, just because I was just trying to get them under my hands. And so, like I said, I'll gravitate if I see D7 or a D sus4, I'll gravitate towards A minor.
Right.
And that way I start somewhere in the middle. And then that's also what led me to playing them like enclosures, if that makes sense, right? Because out of those shapes.
So tell me again, you've told me what an enclosure is, and you do me a favor and just define what an enclosure is for somebody who doesn't know.
Well, where you have your target notes. So if I'm targeting the root 3rd and 5th, mainly the root 3rd and 5th, I don't really approach the 7th too much. But then I will enclose around a note above and a half step below. So I do chromatic enclosures to where if I'm seeing the arpeggio D major, I will...
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really just I stole all of that just from like Charlie Parker bebop kind of stuff to kind of get that in there. But the way I came across it, being a rock player more, was that I would since I play so many 3-note per string scales, there's only a couple of ways of playing an enclosure. It's like on the same string, or you could do diatonic enclosures, but So like I really discovered it from looking at like rock licks that we might play, like that kind of thing, right? So those are all diatonic enclosures. And then what I would do is I would start from the 3rd, like if I wanted A minor, I would enclose the 9th.
Yeah.
And then I started putting it with scales to where I would do like...
Yeah.
And so I would do stuff like that. So I try to mix that in with the arpeggios to keep me from sounding like I'm just playing arpeggios all over the place. But it doesn't always work. Not for me anyway. I try.
Right.
Playing
No,
the same
it's-
thing always gets a little boring. We always need to look for more spice. I always am.
I started looking at my students and they get glazed over. I either know that I've lost them or they're like getting really bored with what I'm playing. So
No, for me it was like when I was just watching you do all that, I was just like what was going through my head was like Jesus, there's like all these different ways that I could approach this I haven't really thought about.
What about James or Liam or Dustin? How do you find, what are you doing, babe?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So what I was looking for is I sent myself a text,
Oh,
and I wanted to put the. Oh, there
Oh,
it
there it
is.
is.
Okay. I was going to put the
the
links
file.
links for them up on the chat, and then maybe
Oh,
play
cool.
one of them. But yeah, you're right. Let's do it. So, but I wanted to find out from both. Well, actually, James, Dustin, and Liam. Same, the same questions. Dustin,
Liam's.
Liam. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, can't hear you. Can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Yeah.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So what was the question? So where are we when I practice scales?
So when I
Yeah.
practice scales or arpeggios, one of the things I keep running into is I'll practice the scales and then try to use it in improvisation. And then when I try to use the thing I've been practicing, it just comes out like I'm playing a scale.
Oh, right.
Where,
Yeah, that's what I guess I used to do that, but now I try to I mean, when I've been practicing improv, I just try not to I try to come up with more melodic ideas. Like I might even just think of a rhythmic thing or um yeah, just like I try not to play. And I noticed that too. It's like you practice all these scales, and then it's like, all right, when do I use? I might use it
right,
for a quick little run or something like that. Like I might just blast through it, or do the old third, you know,
Do you start
something
normally
like
I
that,
can't
or
hear
what?
you. Can't hear your guitar yet.
Do you
Oh,
start normally on the third string or the fifth string? Do you have a string you?
yeah, I probably start in the middle typically. Um, I don't know. Yeah, but I find scale practice because I mean, I don't know all of them. I know all the major stuff, but when you get into like harmonic minor or things like that. I don't, well, I kind of know harmonic minor pretty well, but like melodic minor is always just a pain for me. It's like, for some reason, it just, there's always the note that I'm just not used to
They
going to.
sound
It like screws you up.
by
So,
the sound by themselves. A lot of them just sound weird.
John has
yeah.
taught me those wonderful tricks with the.
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
guys learn those?
Yeah. John, you showed me some, I forget what it was now, but you showed me
Yeah.
some, I think it was
Yeah.
more around like a,
It's minor pentatonic flat 5, minor pentatonic flat 1.
Yes. So it's the
yeah.
melodic minor improv rock guitar player hack. You know,
Yeah.
so
Melodic minor for dummies.
right.
That's the one. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. That's my take. Yeah, I try to avoid scales, and then when I play arpeggios, I don't know. Sometimes I'll throw in like a fourth or something too. Just like I might do a. I don't. You probably can't hear the guitar. Do you hear it?
Not yet. Do you have original sound from music set to on?
Oh, it was on. That went off. Hang on.
The
Okay.
default is
All right.
off.
It's. Yeah, I
You could-
flipped it, but it flipped back on me.
Huh.
Can you hear it now?
Flipping you off like John in the picture.
There you go.
Now we
All right.
can
I might do those. I might do something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Those are cool.
so
Do you
yeah, they're
deliberately
fun, but now I
practice
feel like I'm
those?
stuck.
Oh.
Not totally, but it's like, all right, I usually find one new thing to take me in another direction,
Right.
but I found with like melodic minor, I don't know. A lot of times I was like, where am I going to use it though? And then I just kind of get rid of it because I
Oh.
mean, unless I'm playing jazz standards, which I can't. I suck at jazz, so I just say, ah, forget it. You know,
Write a
I'm not
song with
really
a cool
using it.
chord.
Yeah, yeah.
That was gonna that was what I was gonna say was you know, there's an old urban legend that that when Paul, George, and John got together, none of them could afford guitar lessons. So what they would do is hang with their friends, and then you know George would go hang with you know with Ian down the street who knew how to play an E9 chord. So he would show him the E9 chord, and then he would go back to John and Paul and go, look at this E9 chord that I learned, right? And then what they would do is they would write a song that would use the E9 chord simply so that they wouldn't forget how to you know how to play the chord. And
Exactly.
what's so interesting about that story is if it's true, then what it means is that they found a way. They were like sort of unwittingly trying to remember a chord, but sort of unwittingly discovered a way to write songs that use unusual chords.
Yeah.
You know, so
Write something.
yeah, you know, I wrote a few things, you know, a while ago that occasionally sort of veer into melodic minor, and what I think I figured out in terms of melodic minor use in terms of writing is that you don't write songs in melodic minor. It's you know, I tend to
transition.
yeah, I tend to think of it as like sort of the head tilt chord. You know, so like, you know, you hear this chord, oh, this chord sounds nice, this chord sounds like this chord, and then you get to that one chord in the chord progression where you go, huh? You know, and
That's usually the
melodic
melodic
minor
minor.
can be super useful for the, you know, for that. So Julie has, there's a chord progression that you do for your song,
Gort wheel.
Gort Wheel,
Yeah.
okay? So how's the chord progression?
Go.
Uh,
Doesn't it go to
no, it goes D9,
D
D
flat?
flat 9.
And then back to. So it has places where you just play F major.
Yeah, so yeah, that's right. So it goes F, then B flat minor minor 6.
Oh, B flat minor 6. So there you have a nice melodic minor.
Yeah,
and
then F,
now A
then
flat.
A flat Lydia flat 7, then G minor, then D
'Cause I
flat
like
9,
Yeah, then back. Pretty.
yeah.
You want to play over it?
Sure.
So I just found a way that I wanted to learn it specifically. So
Yeah.
you write a progression. And you can jam over it. An experiment. It took me a lot of experiments.
Yeah. Yeah, and in that case, when we got to the A flat 13, I was playing G minor pentatonic flat 1. Because you get all the cool notes from that chord. You know, so it's probably a technique that I probably way overuse.
No, because we don't have a song that has, it's just all A flat 13
Yeah, that's true.
and D flat 9s.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you. Dustin, what about you? So balance between improv and scales and technique.
So, first question: when you say G minor pentatonic flat 1, are you adding the natural 7th flat 1, or are you substituting
Replacing.
that for the
So
for the group?
the idea is to play a G minor pentatonic scale,
Mhm.
but then replace G with G flat.
Gotcha.
And then play that against an A flat 13 chord.
Ah,
And what you get, if by doing that, the G flat would be flat 7, of the A flats, right? Then B flat would be the 9, C would be the 3, D natural is the flat, the sharp 11, F is the 13 or 6, then you're back to the flat 7, see? Then and what I love about it is that I can play the Stairway solo from Stairway to Heaven, play the A flat 13, right? Check this out. Right? And it sounds like I'm playing jazz, even though
I
I'm
was
just playing
I was
the Stairway to
literally
Heaven
just
solo.
gonna ask if that was your audition tape for King Crimson. So
Say what?
I was just gonna ask if that's your audition tape to be in King Crimson.
Totally.
Totally, yeah.
Yep. So to answer your question though about improvising in scales, one of the things that I've dealt with in terms of learning the fretboard is I went to a college where I was taught in a very classical guitar sort of sense. So very much 3 note per string was kind of the first thing that I learned, and I've always sort of struggled with getting out of that 3 note per string. Like those patterns are useful, but to your point, always starting on the 4th or 5th strings.
Hold on. Yeah,
Yep,
stay
we
with
just
us.
lost you.
My camera battery ran out. Hold on.
All right. Yep.
Wait.
Just went black hole on us right there. Yep.
Yeah.
At least we can still hear you.
Yeah. So keep talking. I'm just gonna change the battery out.
There you go. Now we can see again.
Now we'll have it just for a sec. But continue on, he can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I spent a lot of time in my formative years running those scales from the the 5th or the 6th string root, and I think like all players, I've always struggled with being able to play that scale from like the middle of the scale starting. Like it's just an instinct to start on the root note 5th or 6th string, and it just sounds like you're running scales up and down, which nobody's entertained by.
But if you play it as 1 octave, starting from the 6th string,
Mm-hmm.
and then split it up to the next octave, starting on the 4th, or the 3rd,
Mm-hmm.
knowing where the root is, it really opens it up. You might try it. So for instance, if I'm playing G, here's my next G.
Right. Yep.
Okay, I think we can go back to the other camera. See if that works. You're welcome. Yeah, look at that.
Uh-oh.
Except we can fix it.
Now you get a different camera angle.
It'll fix. Yeah, it'll figure it out. It's the whole automatic focus thing.
I think I have it too high. Hi, little camera.
We can see you and hear you at least.
James can tell us his stuff.
Yeah, there we go. Wait, try that. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Yeah, good.
All right.
Perfect. Perfect.
I think it's tilted. Oh, well.
Yeah, it's fine.
We're going to be a little off kilter. It's May.
Yeah, we're going this way.
All right, James's turn.
Yes. It's funny we were talking about melodic minor because I was just playing the
Yeah.
Bourrée, where it's got the and sometimes it's when I teach a scale to my students, I'll show them what would it have sounded like if Bach just used natural minor, if he used harmonic minor, if he used why does the melodic minor make the most sense in that case?
Yeah.
And I feel like the biggest thing is that with the like if he had done like harmonic minor, you get that it's a way to deal with that interval, that minor third that's there.
Yeah.
But then if he didn't lower the sixth and seventh scale degree coming down, it almost sounds too major.
Right.
So it's almost like the and then natural minor almost sounds too like it sounds like it's like a medieval kind of
Yeah.
Wouldn't be appropriate for a dance.
so it just makes you realize like that the melodic minor makes the most sense there, just with the the contour of that
Or
of that
frigid.
melody.
Sorry.
Right.
Different kind of
It's almost
dance.
like it's like Bach Miserlou or something.
Right. Right.
I love that. I love
But
that.
yeah, to answer your question, it's funny. I had a teacher one time, or I forget where I heard this saying it, but they said something like, the scales, when we practice scales and stuff like that, it's kind of like if you went to the store and bought like avocados to make something. It's like, you're not going to probably go home and just eat the avocado. You're probably going to maybe make like guacamole with it or something.
I like it.
It's oh, you like so it's almost like
prefer guacamole.
I think of these as like and it's the same thing. I think sometimes when I go to improvise, I might be thinking I'm working with too much material where it's almost like the scale shape. I feel like I have to play this whole thing, and it's if I start with smaller or work with a smaller idea and just expand out from that. So I know Alan said something about like I'll do a lot with like 2-string ideas because then I can just kind of like cut and paste them.
Yeah.
I remember learning like a G major 7 like arpeggio, and I would out of a book, and I was like, and I'm like, oh cool, I know a G major 7 arpeggio, but it was so like, was I going to remember it, or was I going to, how was I going to use that?
Right.
And then, I was always envious of piano players because it's like they play this one lick in one octave, then they just move it. And
Yeah.
so then when I saw, oh, you could just, and that's so
Yeah.
much freer, and
Right.
I feel like I could be more interesting, you can almost do like keyboard kind of licks with those kind of, with the phrasing could be a lot different. So,
Welcome, Daniel. We have a new guest.
Daniel Miller.
Oh.
Daniel Miller. So Daniel Miller was a student of mine. I think in the years like 2000 something. I could talk about Daniel Miller like kind of all day long. Really, really great, killing guitar player.
Thanks for joining us.
So part of Daniel's claim to fame was he discovered a technique and sent it to John Petrucci that he didn't know about. So he's actually credited for showing John Petrucci a lick. And the rest of us will never be able to say that.
I
But,
can never say
but
that.
Daniel can. So
Thank you for
so anyway,
carrying
welcome.
on.
James
Okay.
was just finishing up.
Yeah.
We're
So
talking about scales and practicing and how we apply, like for instance, a G major 7 arpeggio.
yeah. So what we're talking about is the whole idea that like you practice scales, right? And then, like what I run into sometimes, if I practice the scale, then I try to use that scale in context. And I sometimes have a hard time sort of breaking away from playing the shape verbatim because I've spent so many hours practicing it that way. So I'm sort of asking everybody, like what they do to sort of combat that. And because I'm thinking about just never improvising ever again and only playing scale shapes from this day forward.
John, the scale thin.
Exactly.
All right.
So yeah, so James, go ahead and wrap up what you were saying. Sorry.
yeah, no, I would just, taking things and looking at them in 2-string groupings really, really helped. And some of the things like, for example, taking something that I know really well, like minor pentatonic, and then if I'm playing over like that D9 vamp, I would, just take that and then, do like a Mixolydian pentatonic with the,
Right.
Yes.
or then I would
Yeah.
throw in like, or I might throw in that, take just this shape, this little cell, and then throw the 9 in there. Or, and then just,
Okay.
work
So
with
you
that
kind
a
of
little
start
bit.
with the shape and then sort of expand on that.
Yeah, like take something that I feel, and this is like, if I'm in the heat of battle and I got to come up with something that I know is really solid, and then maybe branch off from that. So, but
Very cool.
Okay.
like
Well,
I like what Alan was saying before about just those 3 arpeggio, taking an arpeggio that and just using it in a different way, or building, stacking them in different ways. I really like that.
Yeah.
Once you realize all the possibilities, it just opens up.
So I wanted to show you guys something that I filmed it actually 2 days ago, and after filming it, I kind of watched it to see if I still like it. And let's see, accept all. Let's see if I can get it to play first. Will it play?
Yeah.
Okay, wait a minute.
Do you
I
want to
think,
get rid of that box?
which box?
Use your Google account? Yeah. Just a distraction. Okay.
Okay, now, let me see. So somebody sent me a backing track, and it was, and the idea was, okay, share sound, and the idea was, improvise over the backing track, and then just send send over the video, kind of like what we did with the 2 monkeys jump back chord progression. By the way, I have a finished version of that. I am going to be posting it. If I was thinking about playing it, if we have time, maybe we'll do that at the end. Okay, so
Sorry, I just saw Dan's guitar and I want to like pass out from just
yeah, well,
gloating
that's
over,
the
like
Jump
I'm
Street
glowing over that
There
guitar.
it is.
Picasso.
Was that the reward for the lesson you gave him?
No, but he did sign it.
Yay.
Okay, so can you guys hear the sound from this?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So here's the solo, and everybody can see it too.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, here we go.
Nice job.
Thank you. And one of the things that I noticed after I watched it, like I just kind of worked at it until I was just kind of happy with it. And a couple of things jumped out at me in the chord progression. One was in bar 4, the rhythm section does this thing where they do a 16th note anticipation into B3. So 1, 2, zakata-da, right? So another thing that happened was it's all kind of E minor up until there's a moment where the band plays a G sharp minor chord into A minor 9, right? So I wanted to be sure that I sort of catch those things, and then at the tail end on beat 3 of the 16th measure, there was a D sharp diminished 7th chord, right? So I kind of so as I was practicing it, one of the things I was practicing a lot was to try to catch each one of those sort of target points. And I think I did all that okay. But then when I watched it, one of the things I noticed was that I didn't use my pinky even once. And it was like, God! You know what I
You're
mean?
mad at yourself.
I don't know if
But
I'm
it's a
mad.
beautiful sounding solo.
Well,
Remember how they told you told us to limit things.
Yes.
Like,
Oh,
don't
is that
play
what I
on
was
beat
doing?
one.
Yeah.
Don't use string two.
Yeah, that's what
Just
I was
pretend
doing.
that you were just
I was
saying to
pretending
myself,
never to use
don't
the
use
yeah.
your pinky.
Yeah, because really, I'm just sort of coming from that '70s baby boomer, Eric Clapton, three-fingered, never ever use your pinky no matter what
Pinkies
kind
are
of
for
thing.
wankas.
Yeah.
I had a question.
Yes.
So recording something like that, like how far into how long like are you working with a track like that before you came up with with that?
So I probably practiced it for about 2 hours. Probably two solid hours of just kind of playing it over and over and over again, and then sort of deciding what things I really know, and then that I wanted to make sure I get, and then how to get. So what I ended up doing was like making up a lick. Like for example, for that 60 note anticipation into beat 3 of the 4th measure, the lick that I played was 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So I just made sure that when I got to that part, I just played that lick. And then to do anything I want until I get there and go da-da-da-da, and then continue the solo from there,
Make it tight with that.
right?
Yeah, because
So-
I was asking because it sounded, I mean it sounded amazing, but there was a spontaneity to it as well. Like even though like you're saying like you worked it out, like it sounded like I don't know, something about it that didn't sound worked. Like it sounded very fresh, like
Well,
which is amazing.
So what I was getting at was well, thank you for that. What I was trying to do is I wanted it to maintain sort of that free and improvised kind of a feel, but I also knew that, like for me personally, that like if I didn't hit those certain points, so I guess it was improvised, except that I had certain targets that I was trying to hit. Do you know what I mean? It's like almost like you're running an obstacle course, and then when you round the third corner, you have to ring this bell that's over here sitting on that wall, So get there any way you can, but make sure you ring the bell. That's kind of my thought process.
That's great.
So-
Yeah, I was also worried you were going to say it was your first time through the track, and then I was going to say I'm never improvising again.
No, no, nothing like that. That's one of the things that I think I have learned is that nobody really cares how much you've practiced it. Like if the solo sounds terrible and you played it just off the top of your head, and I've done that too. It's like I don't know what I'm going to play. I'm just going to play whatever I feel, man, and then it comes out terrible. It's like, oh, good.
Well, you played on Shimmer and Glow and you did it perfectly.
Yeah, I kind of. Although, okay, so
It took me like 75 takes trying to find the perfect one. But I also wanted to play the whole thing from beginning to end without cutting, punching in. And so through those 75 times, I'm crafting what I want to do. And then finally, when I figure out what I want to do, it takes me a while to play it how I want. But then I did mine. I'm like, yes, finally. I'm going to get all settled in here for John to do his. And he's like, burr, burr, burr. All right, I'm done. One take.
But you have to keep in mind, though, too, part of why that happened was because
Heard it 75
because
times.
because I heard you craft your solo, so I sat there and listened to it.
Yeah.
So by the time it was my turn, I kind of had an idea of what I was going to do, So the fact that I got it in the first take, I was lucky, But that's
not
certainly
lucky.
not norm. That's normally not my workflow.
Well, it's
John, I got a question I'll pose to everybody based
Okay.
off of tonight's conversation here, because I find it interesting. I think just hearing how you talked about that solo and working up sections and everything, and I've been having this dilemma myself for the past year probably of how I'm thinking about things. In that I feel like somewhere down the road, I've kind of lost who I was as a musician and a guitarist. And what I mean by that is kind of weird, because I was talking to some of my students, the ones that are graduating, that graduated this semester, some of my seniors, and and they're talking about going out and what are they going to do after life after college. Now they're out there and goes, what do I practice now? I don't have a teacher telling me what to practice anymore, and I don't know what to do. How do I do this? And I'm like, well, you're going to find your way. And the conversation led its way to, like, after each one of my degrees, it took me 2 years to recover from that degree. And what I mean is like I got lost because I think sometimes, and I joke with my wife about this because I tell her all the time. I said I feel like I'm contributing to the delinquency of a minor by teaching, if that makes sense, because they get trapped in so many of these things. Whether they can get trapped in the cage system, they can get trapped in the 3-note per string, they can get trapped in these boxed arpeggios or boxed pentatonics, and they don't always sound musical, and it changes the shape. And I remember something that you said way long back. Gosh, this may have gone all the way back to when I studied with you in the 90s, but you were talking about how you went home after graduating and you jammed with your buddies, and they're like, why do you suck now? You just graduated, and you graduated, from, right? I mean, you told that story. I think you even told that when you came down to Belmont and did your workshop. And, I've experienced similar situations. And I always feel like I sound the same. All the tools that I use, everything, I feel like all my solos just sound the same. And it's because I'm using all these devices. And I've also turned into this guy who, for good, bad, indifferent, or whatever, I don't really work out solos. I don't think I've actually worked out a solo since 2016. I just love improvising. So it's like, I might run through things a few times to get some ideas on mapping my fretboard and the sounds that I want. But whatever I play, it's certainly not the same as what I played before. It doesn't mean that licks don't get in there, because I've got certain licks that I'll play, certain ideas, like if I'm, I don't know. I think I started studying into jazz so much that I just kind of took away, and I had to keep coming up with ways to tackle that kind of music. And not that I ever got really successful at it. But I guess what I'm asking is, do you all ever feel that sometimes we've lost some of that original drive, that oomph behind who we were coming into playing guitar after going through all these studies? Or did you come out on the other side unscathed? I felt like I came out on the other side with a couple of bruises that it took a while to recover from. And then I'd find myself, and then lo and behold, I'd go do another degree, and then I lost myself again. Like during my master's and my doctorate, I totally lost myself. The doctorate is probably one of the worst because I was doing more composing than playing guitar. And I don't know, I had to rediscover who I was, and it took a while to do that. And then again, and the reason this conversation sparked that is because I would go back to practicing scales. I'd go back to practicing all the fundamentals, the arpeggios and all this. And it's like I felt like I was starting at ground zero, even though my skill level was higher. It was still ground zero. If that makes sense. Yeah. Maybe I went on a tangent. I should go on a late night show.
When I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I was just racked with insecurity and anxiety, and it took me a few years to even enjoy playing. I mean, I was in bands all the time, but I don't know what it was. Well, my father passed away, so I think that kind of contributed to it, but being in this environment, and of course I was older, and I had to throw myself into feeling like I knew nothing, because you're learning new things. And so I realized later, like, of course I'm not going to know everything. Of course I'm going to struggle with some things. And then I thought, that's what this is. That's why this is the exciting part about learning the guitar, because we're always faced with these things we can't do, and we just keep playing them until we can do them. And there's so much satisfaction in that. So I started to get over, I still have a little anxiety, but John knows. Poor John. An anxious person is hard to be around. But you have ADD,
She's
so
a dream.
we have different things.
This girl is a dream. Don't let her kid
But
you.
the thing, I just had to hang on to these little nuggets, like, oh my gosh, I sucked at this, and now I can kind of do it, There's a lot of joy in that, and then I realized sometimes it's not just the gigs, it's the practicing, the having this in my life all the time, like how wonderful is it? And I think working out a solo as opposed to improvising, we're still working at it.
Sure.
We're still putting our heart into it and It's just a different way of expression. You know, I don't feel like you're any less of a guitar player by,
Oh, no,
I mean,
of course
if
not.
anything, that's what we all strive for, is like, oh, put on anything. And I'm like, I can play anything over anything.
And you know,
That's the ultimate goal.
Keep in mind, me playing on anything doesn't mean it sounds good. It just
well,
it just means I'm playing on something.
What did you say about improvisation?
oh, it's so okay. So improvisation, yeah. One of the things I tell my students a lot is that improvisation is composition done quickly,
Yeah.
and then composition is improvisation done slowly.
Right.
You know, so and it's kind of the two. But what I was going to say about that is that, you know, for me, that struggle that you discuss that you're discussing, and I really want to hear from Dan Miller about all of this too. But I just want to sort of quickly add that what I keep coming back to in terms of a fundamental question is, do I know what I want to sound like? Do I have a picture of, you know, like if somebody came along and was able to wave a magic wand at me and make me play exactly the way I'd want to be able, do I know what that sounds like? Because the worst part of me with being attention deficit disorder is I change my mind about that all the time. You know, I'll practice until I can get a certain amount of stuff together, and it's like, I don't want that anymore.
Right.
You know, so it's so
That's
part of
okay,
it is that is that what you want evolves, but it's all. But I'm also want to add to that, it's always you. You know,
That's true,
and I think
too.
that's one of the things I've sort of had to learn to get comfortable with is that, you know, on one hand, I'm always going to suck at playing guitar. I'm just accept it. I'm always going to suck. Just keep working at it. Just try to not and forget about the idea that I'm ever going to think of myself as a good guitar player. And part of that comes from the fact that I'm, you know, like my face is right up against all the brush strokes, so all I see is the flaws, right? But
That's what makes us strive to be better, is to even out those flaws. That's what we're always looking at.
right, that's why a guitar club like this even exists, is so we can try to come to terms with that sort of collectively. It's like we're becoming, you know, my vision for this is to become the hive mind of guitar.
So the
You know,
Borg,
Yeah.
we will be
Sort of the board.
assimilated. Are you
Exactly.
trying to assimilate us?
I'm trying to assimilate all of you.
Oh, man.
Daniel,
Daniel Miller.
you came into the conversation late,
Yes.
but welcome.
I was teaching, so it's
Ooh,
funny that you
good
mentioned the
excuse.
G7 chord. That's literally what I was teaching, right? I'm dead serious. Yeah.
Really?
I have an advanced student who was asking about a G7 arpeggio that they could just use really quickly to fake a solo or something. And this is ironic because I was teaching the lesson that John taught me 20 years ago about how to get the most mileage out of any lick you can. So
Which
Ah.
really,
no, I know I know this is ironic, but like, if we're doing that, like, well, they were doing like a G minor one, for instance, like they're doing like and what they were doing with it was, I was like, well, if you're doing like that, slide into that, try sliding, like you said, like, well, if you're sliding into the chord tones, slide also into it from the top, maybe do a chromatic in the middle, like, then do like a, then try a little. And then start now, and then find every way to get to that note or chord, bending,
Yeah.
sliding, whatever, and then you have 40 licks over the G7 chord or
Just
G minor
over
seven.
G7.
So that's like it's funny because when I came in, I was like, oh no way, this is kind of what I was just doing the past hour, you know. And then I also, the fun thing I got this from John as well. I'll never forget this. We had one of his I don't remember the name of the class, but I remember everything in the class. It was one of your advanced rock technique classes.
yep.
And he had some of the best players at the school at that time. And he humbled all of us in the most amazing way. He goes, we're going to play over the most simple chord progression ever. And it was just like a D minor 7, like, we got this, or I believe that's what it was. And he goes, you can only use 2 fingers and 1 string. And we were like, oh. And then we had no time to think about it. He goes, go. And then we all got like 8 bars, and then it switched. And like, it was hard, but it taught us all, okay, I got 2 fingers, now I can't do scales or shredding. I have to stick on
Oh,
one
my
string and then make a solo out of it. And the first couple passes were rough, but after that, we all started getting really creative ideas. So that's the other thing I was doing. Yeah, that's another lesson I got from you that I still use that to this day. It really, really helps. So like if a student was learning the G7 chord, the G minor, I make them learn it on like the G string, like the actual
Right.
chord tones. I go, I want you to hit those on these spots, but in between, let's see what some phrases you can do. and then
Oh, that's
we'll change the style up. So maybe we'll do like an Andy Timmons style, and then I'll be like, well, here's like a blues rock style, or here's like a samba, or even stuff that didn't make any sense. Here's a metal style. Go crazy on that, and let me see.
right.
Try something totally bizarre in that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and a lot of that was, the whole idea behind that is to just get is to, is to try to think a little bit, spend part of your, part of your consciousness to think a little bit about phrases and phrasing. And if you only got two strings, if you only got one string and two fingers, all you've got left is phrasing.
And I
And-
bet everybody thought of something completely different.
Oh yes, they did.
It's
But
such
see,
huge restriction.
and before
Oh, yeah.
that, I did it that way. What I used to do was I used to say try to play phrases instead of shredding, and then what would happen was everybody would shred. And it wasn't until I just kind of said, okay, you can only use two fingers and one string,
It's hard to shred.
and it's like that takes shredding off the table, So
Beam alive.
and it's something that I find myself doing if I'm listening to myself playing, just thinking this is way too busy and I'm playing way too much, start deliberately limiting myself. Like, for
No
example,
pinky.
never using the pinky, but
Deliberately.
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 So, John, there's like I remember reading at one point that Jeff Beck, big fan of Django Reinhardt, Django only
There you
had
go.
the first two fingers.
Mhm.
He would literally duct tape his fingers together to, try to do exactly that, limit himself and challenge his creativity in that way.
Yeah.
And he played those crazy arpeggios with those two fingers.
With the two fingers. I mean, there's if any of you guys haven't seen the video on YouTube of him from like the 1930s, it's
Yes,
well
I
worth
have.
looking at. But I will actually so one of the things that I do too is drop the pick and start using my fingers like Jeff Beck style
Yep.
because I can't shred with my fingers. It forces me to be more vocal with the guitar.
Well, it also completely changes the tonality of the guitar too.
completely.
Yeah.
But it forces you to play it a completely different way.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's it. Yeah. But I agree. Anything. So I guess the point is, between now and next month when we meet again, think about that idea, and I would love to hear you guys report back on what you've ended up practicing, and. So the question that I want to sort of pose to everybody was that if somebody could cast a magic spell on you and then suddenly you're playing exactly the way that you want to sound, what would that sound like if you could?
Oh, wow.
Now you can either answer or you don't have to, but I know for myself that's been an important question to sort of keep like the center of my mind as I practice. Just because it helps me kind of keep focused on what am I trying to get better at and what do I really not care about so much. Huh? Okay. All right. So, okay,
Our next
I'll
one
do
will
that.
be June 16, because June 2nd, we're in New York. June 9, we're at the lake.
Yeah.
June 23rd, I'm doing the vocal or the
So-
songwriting workshop.
Okay. So when is it?
June 16th.
June 16th. Okay, good. June 16th. That's gonna be the next one. So it'll be 7 p.m. Eastern. Daniel, where are you in the world right now?
I am still in Cincinnati, Ohio, but I'm looking to move to Nashville because
Nice. Okay.
there is unfortunately the industry around here is now almost dead. And, like there's nothing, and the only place you can play out are 5 bars, and they only allow cover bands, and they give you a list of songs you're allowed to play. So
Nice.
I'm like, yep, time to leave pasture. So I'm still my hometown, but like I have a lot of people I know in Nashville, and I've been down there just looking at places to check out and see what I can get into down there for fun. Get some mostly session work probably, but it's fun. I mean, we'll see how it is. And plus, when they see this, the country guys get all, "What was that? I don't know. That ain't a guitar," Yeah.
I had one of those and I sold it like
Oh, you did?
12 years ago. So every time I see one of those Petrucci's, I'm like,
Oh,
The
so
funny thing about this
sad.
is I'm gonna demystify this because everyone's always like, "You got Excalibur." There's nothing special about this guitar. It's basswood body, maple neck, rosewood fretboard. That's it.
Yeah.
It's an RG. Mine's beat the crap too. I've got all kinds of nicks and dings on it, but every time I bring it out, someone's always like, "The mystical unicorn, you have it."
That was the dream guitar during those years, man. I always wanted one. I could never find one.
I got it from a collector in Boston in 2002 because I'll show you why. He said it was defective because of this. Remember, he's a collector, not a player. I don't see this on camera. There's a little air bubble in the finish right there,
Oh,
Oh yeah.
and
That's
it.
defective.
Yeah,
It's
I did that.
worthless.
That's what
me.
makes
I
it
learned-
perfect.
That's a stand broke and it's fell, but I learned I can also throw a stand 100 yards. But yeah, he didn't want it, so I was at Berkeley and he was like, "I don't know, I can't charge you a lot. This is kind of defective and it's got issues with it." I was like, "Well, what are you thinking?" I'm not even joking. The guy's like, "Give me 900, we'll call it a day." And I was like,
Wow.
"Sure thing.
Wow.
There you go, buddy." And he was just like,
Cash?
"Yeah, it's not. Yeah, there's the cash." And I was like, "Sweet."
I,
Yeah,
I looked those up recently on Reverb, and your head would spin.
Yeah, they're 25,000 and up. It's absurd.
It's crazy.
25,000?
Yeah, they're not worth it. It's just an RG. You can just go buy an RG, put the
And-
details on yourself.
Right.
John actually confirmed he has. I think I can say this. Petrucci confirmed that he has 2 of these left.
Yes.
And they're disassembled in the factory, but he doesn't play them anymore. He has no love for this. He's all Music Man and loves it and
Of
stuff. He's just
course.
like, yeah, they're just sitting there for like memorabilia. I almost had in 1999. I almost had the one he played on the tour for the Japan, like the video, the images and words. But he was selling it for $5,000 and I put a bid in. And I was a poor college kid. I got $4,200. It was like, take the money and give me like a month. I'll get the $800 and I'll buy that guitar. And then some dude came in and bought it for $10,000. And
Oh.
his wife
Wow.
emailed me back like, sorry.
Rob.
And I'm like, I agree. I'd take the money too. But yeah.
Yeah,
Once
I
got
had
it, was
that-
kinda like, you
I had
one?
that print. I had that print, and then they made one that was black and white with that print. I had that too.
P3. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've lucked into getting a lot of rare guitars, not on purpose. It's just I was in the right time and I bought one, and I was like, okay. And not that I was thinking like, hey, I need this rare guitar. I wanted this one because I always liked it, but that price I couldn't pass up when I was in Boston. But he was a collector, not a
amazing.
dealer or a player, so that was fine with me.
Yeah.
Well, Daniel,
So-
come
so-
down from Cincinnati down to Lexington, Kentucky. That's where I'm at when I'm not in Nashville because I live in Nashville. But
Oh, nice.
come down,
So,
come down, and we'll hook up.
cool, will do.
Yeah, definitely. So what I was going to do before we wrap up, so Daniel, I think you're the only one that haven't heard about this, but we put together a collaboration video.
I have to run, everybody, but
yeah,
so
Jul-
fun to see you all. I'll see you all in June.
You're going to be in New York. You guys said.
When are we in New York?
Oh, sorry. We're going to be in New York June 2nd. We're going to be on a radio program
Oh wow.
in Long
We're
Island.
on Long Island. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we'll
Nice.
keep people updated.
I'll have to keep. That's my stomping grounds right there. So
Really?
Oh, cool.
yeah, let me know
Long
what
Island?
radio station. Yeah, I'm in Long Island.
It's called, hold on. Okay, my calendar. There it is. Rising Star Radio. Oh, hold on. I need to find out what the station is. You can do your thing.
Okay.
Okay. 903 WHPC. You guys heard of that?
Yeah, yeah.
Nassau Community College.
That's one of the schools I teach at.
No way.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you going to be down there? Maybe we can meet.
I'll have to. Yeah, if you let me know like when you guys are gonna be there.
Well,
might work
June
out.
2nd is
June
when
2nd?
is when we're going to be there in the evening, I think.
Yeah, probably. So
But we'll probably go down on the 1st.
Yeah,
Oh, very
probably
cool.
go down on the 1st, hang out for the day, and then go do it.
That's so cool. What a small world.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah,
That
we'll
would
keep in
definitely
touch about it.
Yes.
So Julie has to pack. She's got a trip going to Santa Fe tomorrow. I'm going to play the Two Monkeys compilation video right now if you want to hang and watch it.
We'll get your approvals.
Yeah, if you, yeah. If you want to, but after that, we're just gonna call it. If you're up for watching it,
Yep.
all right. So Julie, we'll see you next time.
All right,
Yay!
bye.
Okay. All right. So here's two monkeys jump back. So you'll see how this works. Let's see. There we go. Yeah. Wait a minute. Zoom. No, the audio is coming into that. Audio. Let me do this. I'll do it this way. Okay, so if I play the audio. Jeff, is that coming to the audio? Okay, everybody can hear me now? Hold on, I'm gonna stop share. All right, and you guys were able to hear the audio okay?
Yeah.
It was weird. The way I had it configured here, I couldn't. But if you could, that's great. So anyway, seriously, great job. It's so much fun to watch, because everybody brings a totally different thing to it, which I think is so cool. So I'm thinking about doing another one of those soon. I don't know exactly yet what I'm going to do it with. Haven't really decided. If anybody has a tune or chord progression they want to throw out that we could potentially use, we could do that. I think the lesson that I learned from putting this one together is to not use iMovie. Next time out, I'm going to use Premiere Pro because it's going to be so much easier to kind of line everything up. That was, it was pretty easy to get, to get everything in. What was hard was getting iMovie to cooperate with me moving the audio sources around. But I'm not complaining. It just took longer than I meant to. So really great, man. I got to tell you, this is one of the best meetings we've done of this. I hope we get to do more of this. Tell your friends. Guitar hive mind. That's what we're looking for. All right, Daniel. Great to see you, man. Let's keep in touch. All right.
Yeah. Can I share something in the chat real quick?
Yes.
While that was going on, by the way, whoever played that, everyone, that was awesome. That video was cool. Everyone was tasty licks.
Yes.
I was gonna say that if everyone keeps playing like that, they gotta start handing out gym memberships because the tone was fat. This was some tasty licks. I found this I just found it right now. John, this is actually 20 years ago. 1 week ago, 20 years ago. This is crazy. John himself showed me the ultimate G7 chord, and I'm sending it in chat right now, so that should go to everybody. That was the ultimate G7. We've only played it once. That was
Oh.
the ultimate G7 chord.
Yes.
Never played it since then.
That's right. That's because it's the only way to do it.
Yes. Bent the space-time continuum. Very fun.
Yes.
I just shared that. Real
Thank
quick,
you. Thank you for that. Okay, you guys. Hey, great time. Thank you very much. Julie and I will see you next month. Cool. Thank you very much. All right.
Thanks, John.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.